Life as a monk during the Middle Ages is frequently portrayed as a peaceful and contemplative existence dedicated to God, spirituality, and helping the less fortunate. However, this popular image couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the life of a medieval monk was brutal, dehumanizing, and incredibly difficult. Monasteries, far from being places of tranquility, were often scenes of hardship, strict discipline, and unrelenting labor. So why exactly were people drawn to this way of life? What made them become monks? And what did they actually do all day? Well, you're about to find out as we delve into the hidden realities of monastic life and reveal the shocking truth behind the facade. A monk's life began at the crack of dawn and continued late into the night with little respite. Their day was rigidly scheduled down to the minute, leaving almost no room for spontaneity or rest. The hours were harsh and unforgiving, testing the limits of human endurance. Monastic vows demanded a life of poverty, which meant that a monk's material possessions were limited to the clothes on his back and the objects essential for his daily tasks. They wore simple, rough-spun wool habits that were uncomfortable and often patched together from discarded clothing. Their bedding consisted of a straw pallet, offering a hard, lumpy surface that provided little comfort. And they ate coarse, filling foods, such as bread, vegetables, and ale. Meat was a rare treat, reserved only for special occasions or for guests. The portions were designed for sustenance, not pleasure, and the quality varied depending on the resources available. During lean times, hunger and deprivation were constant companions. The lack of proper nutrition led to malnutrition and a weakened immune system, leaving monks vulnerable to diseases and infections that could quickly turn deadly. Moreover, the monotony of the diet, which consisted mainly of bland staples, made each meal a reminder of their austere lifestyle. One of the most challenging aspects of a monk's life was the vow of chastity. They were required to live a life of total celibacy, abstaining from sexual relations, marriage, or even romantic love. This vow not only demanded the suppression of physical desires, but also the severing of emotional ties to the outside world. For many, including those who had left behind families and loved ones to join the monastery, this level of isolation was a heavy psychological burden that weighed on their minds and hearts. Imagine being stripped away from the warmth of family bonds, the comfort of companionship, and the joy of human connection. Your world now revolves around the four walls of a monastery, where silence is deafening and the company of fellow monks offers little solace. The vow of chastity becomes more than just a religious commitment. It transforms into a barrier between you and the richness of human experience. You are locked in a perpetual battle against your nature, yearning for affection and intimacy while duty and devotion keep you confined. Within the rigid boundaries of celibacy, days turn into years, and the ache of loneliness becomes a constant undercurrent in your existence. You question whether you can endure this isolation for the rest of your life. Is it worth sacrificing your happiness and emotional well-being for a higher calling? The vow of chastity in a monastery is a test of unwavering commitment and resilience. It pushes you to the brink, forcing you to confront the depths of your longing for connection and the strength of your resolve to stay true to your vows. During the long winter months, life in a monastery could turn into a harrowing struggle for survival. The damp, drafty stone buildings offered little protection from the biting winds and heavy snowfall. Heating was rudimentary and insufficient, leaving the vast majority of monasteries freezing cold and miserable. This harsh environment took a toll on the monks' health, making them vulnerable to a range of illnesses, including pneumonia, tuberculosis, and hypothermia. It wasn't unusual for monks to succumb to these ailments, and the mortality rate during winter was significantly higher than in warmer months. Imagine being trapped within the confines of a cold, damp monastery as the winter chill seeps into your bones. Each day brings a new wave of biting winds and heavy snowfall, making the prospect of venturing outside daunting and dangerous. The flickering flames in the hearth offer little comfort against the icy grip of winter. With insufficient heating and dwindling supplies, the temperature inside the monastery plunges, turning your breath into visible clouds and making sleep a restless affair. You huddle in your rough woolen habit, trying to trap as much warmth as possible, while the sound of howling winds and falling snow fills your ears. The risk of illness looms large, and the sight of fellow monks succumbing to harsh conditions serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of life. As the days grow shorter and the nights longer, you find yourself yearning for the warmth of a hearth, the comfort of a warm meal, and the embrace of sunlight on your skin. But winter's icy grip tightens its hold, and you are left at the mercy of the elements, battling not just the cold, but the fear of what it might bring. Within the hallowed halls of monasteries, silence was not just valued. It was enforced with unwavering strictness. Monks were forbidden from speaking except during designated times, plunging them into a world of hushed tones and unspoken thoughts. Outside of the designated periods, speech was replaced by gestures, written notes, and the occasional whisper, creating an atmosphere of secrecy and hushed communication. In this world of silence, a monk's day unfolded without the sound of laughter, conversation, or even casual chatter. Meals became solemn affairs, punctuated by the clink of silverware and the rustle of robes. Work continued in a hushed rhythm, the only sounds the scrape of tools and the murmur of prayers. Even the scriptorium, where monks copied manuscripts, was filled with the scratching of quills and the soft whisper of turning pages. In this monastic setting, silence was more than just a rule. It was a tool of discipline and introspection, shaping the very fabric of a monk's existence. The absence of spoken words created a profound sense of solitude, even in the midst of a community. Each monk retreated into his inner world, contemplating his faith, his purpose, and the silence that surrounded him. The punishments for breaking the strict rules of a monastery were severe and designed to humiliate and deter wrongdoers, depending on the severity of the offense. Punishments ranged from physical to psychological, targeting not just the body, but also the mind and soul of the transgressor. For minor infractions, a monk might be confined to a period of silent penance, enduring solitude as punishment. More serious offenses could lead to physical chastisement, ranging from painful beatings to being sewn up in a sack along with other objects like rocks or sticks, which would be dropped into a nearby lake or river. This form of punishment, known as being sewn up in the sack, was intended to cause physical discomfort and humiliation, The combination of confinement, potential injury, and public ridicule served as a powerful deterrent, reminding monks of the consequences of disobedience. Additionally, monks found guilty of more grievous sins, such as sexual misconduct or heresy, faced the ultimate penalty, expulsion from the monastery. Banishment carried a heavy social stigma, branding the individual as a fallen monk and disrupting the fabric of their community. Expelled monks were often shunned by society, struggling to find acceptance and facing a future marked by isolation and prejudice. A monk's life was one of self-sufficiency, embracing a wide range of trades and skills necessary for the functioning of the monastic community. From farming to brewing, baking to blacksmithing, monks were expected to contribute to the practical needs of their order. Agriculture was a central focus. Monks were often responsible for cultivating crops, tending livestock, and managing the agricultural lands associated with the monastery. These activities not only provided sustenance for the community, but also ensured their independence from external sources. Animal husbandry played a vital role. Monks raised livestock such as cattle, sheep, and pigs, providing them with food, leather, and other essential products. They also engaged in trades and crafts to meet the various needs of the monastery. Blacksmiths crafted and repaired tools and other metal objects. Brewers produced beer for consumption, and bakers provided fresh bread. This emphasis on self-sufficiency instilled a strong sense of practicality and resourcefulness among the monks, equipping them with the skills to sustain themselves and their community in the face of challenges. The hours of prayer were a central and demanding aspect of a monk's daily routine. They commenced their worshipful duties in the early hours of the morning, rising before sunrise to participate in the first service of the day. These services often continued throughout the day, with monks attending several rounds of prayers, readings, and rituals. They returned to prayer in the evening, maintaining a constant dialogue with the divine. This rhythm of prayer not only shaped their spiritual experience, but also dictated a significant portion of their day. During these prayer services, monks recited psalms, sang hymns, and engaged in communal worship. They also participated in the recitation of the divine office, a series of daily prayers that covered various biblical passages and theological themes. The dedication of so much time to prayer reflected the core purpose of monastic life, which was to cultivate a deep connection with God through continuous worship and reflection. Medical knowledge during the medieval period was limited, and monasteries were no exception in this regard. When it came to treating illness or injuries, monks often relied on traditional remedies, herbalism, and folk practices. They kept herbs and simples, which were believed to have healing properties, and used them to concoct various tonics and treatments. This approach to medicine, while rooted in tradition, had its limitations. Without a scientific understanding of the human body or the causes of disease, many ailments went undiagnosed or improperly treated. Minor injuries or common illnesses could have serious consequences, sometimes leading to disability or even death. For instance, a small cut that became infected could result in gangrenous disease. The lack of proper medical care turned what might be a simple medical issue into a life-threatening one. Despite their secluded nature, Monasteries weren't entirely immune to the brutalities of the outside world. These religious communities often became targets for various reasons, ranging from the desire for their valuable possessions to the pursuit of power or simply the thrill of raiding. Bandits, seeing the wealth and defenseless population of a monastery, considered it an easy target. Rival nobles, seeking to expand their influence or weaken their opponents, might also launch attacks, targeting the monastery's resources and personnel. Such assaults could disrupt the tranquil atmosphere of the monastery, exposing the monks to violence, fear, and loss. The vow of obedience compelled a monk to relinquish his personal autonomy and submit to the authority of the abbot upon taking their vows. A monk's life was no longer his own. He was to follow the instructions and commands of the abbot without question or dissent, regardless of whether he personally agreed with them or not. This meant that a monk's decisions, actions, and even emotions were subject to the will of the abbot, creating a dynamic where individuality and personal agency were subordinate to the demands of obedience. A cruel or tyrannical abbot could make a monk's life miserable, subjecting them to excessive workloads, harsh punishments, or unjust treatment. At the same time, a benevolent abbot could guide his monks with wisdom and fairness, fostering an environment of mutual respect and shared purpose. Monastic life was a profound physical challenge that tested the limits of a person's endurance and resilience. From grueling hours of labor to strict dietary practices, monks were pushed to their physical boundaries. Hard manual labor was an integral part of a monk's daily routine. They engaged in extensive farming activities, working the fields, tending livestock, and ensuring the production of food for the community. These physically demanding tasks required strength, stamina, and a capacity to withstand the rigors of manual labor. Strict fasts and a monotonous diet lacking in variety contributed to the physical toll on monks. They frequently abstained from eating meat, dairy, and eggs, relying primarily on bread, vegetables, and fruits for nourishment. This restricted diet may have led to malnutrition and weakened their immune systems, making them more susceptible to illness and diseases. Self-flagellation, a practice aimed at self-discipline and penance, added another layer of physicality to their lives. Monks subjected themselves to acts of self-punishment, such as whipping or beating themselves as a means of atonement for sins, or as a way to express their devotion and commitment to their faith. For many individuals, the decision to become a monk was not driven by a deep-rooted religious calling, but rather by more pragmatic circumstances. Poverty was a significant factor. Men who had little prospects for financial stability or advancement in society often sought refuge in monasteries. By taking the vows of poverty, they renounced their worldly possessions and secured a place within a religious community that provided basic necessities. Similarly, being the younger son of a noble family without an inheritance also pushed many towards monastic life. In a system where primogeniture prevailed, the eldest son inherited titles and wealth, while younger sons were often overlooked. Monasteries offered them a viable path to social standing and purpose, allowing them to remain within the bounds of society without the burden of expectations associated with their birthright. Within the secluded walls of a monastery, Monks were often shielded from the currents of the outside world, leading to a disconnect from major historical events, political changes, and societal developments. Their focus remained primarily on their religious duties and internal affairs. This isolation from the broader world resulted in a limited understanding of what was happening beyond the monastery's confines. For example, monks might have been unaware of major wars, revolutions, or scientific discoveries that were shaping the course of history elsewhere. They lived in a bubble, their awareness confined to the immediate surroundings and internal concerns of their religious community. Their lives were a constant battle against temptation and sin, with an intense focus on spiritual warfare and the suppression of all worldly desires. Every moment was carefully structured to minimize distractions and potential pitfalls. The vow of celibacy, for instance, was a direct challenge to their natural instincts, demanding absolute abstinence from sexual activity. To help them in this battle, monasteries implemented strict rules and regulations, limiting interactions with the outside world, providing limited access to books or materials that could stimulate carnal thoughts, and encouraging a life of prayer and contemplation. Furthermore, monks were encouraged to engage in acts of penance and self-discipline as a means of atoning for their sins and weakening their sinful nature. They might fast, perform self-flagellation, or undertake rigorous physical tasks as a way to subdue their desires and redirect their thoughts towards their spiritual obligations. Being a scribe in a medieval monastery was both a prestigious and demanding role. Responsible for copying manuscripts, they spent countless hours poring over ancient texts. Their days were filled with the meticulous work of transcribing letters, words, and entire pages, preserving knowledge for posterity. However, this crucial task came with its own set of challenges and potential hazards. Scribes often worked in dimly lit scriptoriums, straining their eyes to decipher fading ink or brittle pages. This lack of proper lighting led to a high rate of vision problems among scribes, blurring their world beyond the illuminated surface of the manuscripts. Additionally, the repetitive and meticulous nature of their work strained their backs, causing discomfort and, in some cases, full-blown arthritis. Despite the physical toll, scribes played a vital role in preserving knowledge and advancing learning during a time when literacy was a rare commodity and books were precious treasures. Contrary to the image of monasteries as secluded and self-sufficient communities, they were often deeply involved in the economic activities of their region. Monasteries were not just centers of religious practice, but also centers of production and trade. They managed vast estates that included farms, vineyards, and workshops, generating income and resources for their operations. Their involvement in the economy extended to engaging in commerce, buying and selling goods, and even owning businesses. For example, some monasteries had mills, breweries, or fisheries that produced goods for sale. This engagement in economic activities positioned monasteries as significant players in local markets and made them potential targets for those seeking to acquire their wealth. The abbot, as the head of a monastery, wielded immense power and authority over the monks under his